After the heroic efforts of the police officers, the firefighters, and the tow truck operator, Ashlyn was freed from the car. She had been underwater for at least 27 minutes. Now her life was being put in the hands of paramedics and the doctors who would meet her at the doors of the emergency department at Victoria Hospital, the London Health Sciences Centre, which was only about 5 minutes away. Inside the ambulance, frantic efforts were underway to try to find a pulse.
We couldn't get an IV on her because she was so cold, everything's shunting and kind of going to her core.
Our next option is the intraosseous, which is a drill, and you drill into the leg bone and hook up the IV that way.
So as they're doing compressions, there'd be bits of water filling up the back of her throat. And so in one hand I'm using a laryngoscope blade to keep her tongue out of the way so I can see the cords, and then when I can see the cords, it's now getting flooded with that kind of dirty, murky looking water.
As I was driving, I heard them talking in the back, and you know, I don't know who it was, if it was Marco that was like, I feel a pulse, you know, and I'm trying to concentrate. I've got all these people working very hard in the back of this ambulance doing CPR, and it's slippery roads, so I'm focused on the drive. But of course, like as soon as I hear that, just this huge sense of relief.
A lot of times the medication we give them can kind of kickstart the heart to beat fairly quickly for a while, but then it just, when it kind of wears away, then the heart stops again. So that's why I said to Marco, be prepared to resume CPR, because it might just be the medication that, because I mean, she'd already been underwater for 27 or 30 minutes, so we're just keeping them prepared.
It took only minutes for the ambulance to arrive from the crash scene to Victoria Hospital, where Dr. Terry Skoritz and the emergency team were waiting for Ashlyn.
So at that point, we take her to the CT scan to get a scan of her head, her neck, her spine, her chest, her abdomen, pelvis, to get a sense of how severely injured she is and what are all the injuries that we're dealing with.
Ashlyn was immediately put on a respirator to help her breathe. She had no brain activity. The doctors found she had multiple fractures in her pelvis.
Quite remarkable that when she did come in, that her heart was relatively stable as far as her blood pressure, which they'd regained at the scene or en route, I'm not sure exactly where, I think it was at the scene, had remained quite stable. I've had a few cases of people who've been starved of oxygen, especially young, healthy patients with very healthy hearts, and once they get oxygen back, their heart will respond and start to recover. However, I was quite surprised about her brain function recovery. That was what is quite remarkable in her case. It would be probably very unlikely that I will see another case like this during my career, and that could be true for the London region as far as our trauma team goes.
While the emergency team were trying to stabilize Ashlyn's condition so she could be moved to the ICU, Constable Peter Wrenches and Constable Emad Hayter waited for Ashlyn's husband Braden to arrive at the hospital.
So I go to the hospital and I find Emad, and he's standing at the end of the hallway and he's going through the phone. He says, "Here, look, I found her on Facebook." And
I saw her wedding photos on there, and I saw who she's married to. I mean, that's the thing with Facebook. you can find out a lot on there. You know, so I know who her husband was, I know who her dad was, her mom was. I actually remember sitting in the ICU, and her husband had written this long, kind of not an article, but like a kind of a blog from years before. I think it was about relationships and love and all this. And just thinking, if I have to call this guy right now, it's gonna be a bad night.
The officer that was in the water was standing outside the room, writing on his notebook. So I stopped to see if he was okay. And then I said, "We got a pulse back," and again, I even warned him that I'm not sure if she'll maintain it, but at least, like, you know, she's got, right now, she's breathing on her own.
Well, he tells me we're driving, we're in London at this point, and we give her a shot of, I don't know if it was epinephrine or endorphins or something, and they got a pulse, and I was just floored. I'm like, "You got a pulse?" Like, he was very faint, but it was there. And so then, now that I look back at triage, I know they're working with somebody now. They're not. There's something to work with.
And then the husband shows up. So there's now the three of us in there. And Emad had he'd gone in or he'd gone somewhere. So only the husband was there when I got there. So I sat him down and I really, I figured it's not my point at that point, but I wanted to prepare him. And I said, listen, this is the situation. I said, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what's going on in there. I said, they have a pulse. I said, but you need to prepare yourself. This is very bad. She was underwater for at least 25 minutes, 24, 25 minutes. I said, I don't know how this is going to work out. I said, you need to prepare yourself. And he said to me, I don't want to hear this now. I said, excellent. I said, if you have any other questions you need, here's the thing. And I gave him my card and I said, this is the process. There's a number on the back. You're going to need this and this is what's going to happen. How can we help you?
I've given bad news before to different people and people take it differently. Some people are quiet and kind of are shocked. Some people are overly, saddened on the spot. And it's visible. He was kind of more lethargic in the sense where he was trying to wrap his head around everything that had happened.
And I remember sitting there very, very tired and covered in mud and hair all over and whatever else. And he must have thought, who is this guy? Like, who is this guy? and I'm in TAC gear. And then Emad comes in and I remember we talked to him for a little bit and he sat alone for a while trying to make some phone calls. He was trying to make some calls and rally his people. And Emad and I were quietly sitting there, just sort of on the other half. And then Victim Services came in, we introduced them, and then we were gonna leave. It was nearly 4 in the morning. And I remember Emad saying, I'll pray for you. And he had his hand, and that was a very touching moment for me. That was kind of neat.
Because I knew there after he kind of explained to me that what her parents did and how they were a religious family, and they believe in God and all this, and I was like, I have very strong beliefs as well, and like I said before, everything happens for a reason. I think it was all part of the will of God. Just you never know why things happen, and after looking in hindsight now, everything happens for a reason, and it's just unbelievable.